I grew up in Birmingham, but because of the Second World War starting when I was 2, my parents moved out of Birmingham to near Stourbridge, a place called Kinver, where we spent the war years. Our father commuted into Birmingham where he worked. He was what is known as an actuary. He worked for the Wesleyan Assurance Society. He was an exempted profession during the war, and he was also 35 when the war broke out, so he didn't get called up. But he didn't have an easy time because he did a lot of firefighting at night, and that was quite risky and dangerous as well. He also commuted out to Kinver and Birmingham every day, which with very limited transport was not easy. So we didn't see all that much of my father in the early years, simply because of the logistics. By 1955, I went to university. I actually went to Cambridge University, where my father had been before, and studied medicine. I finished my training in St Bartholomew's Hospital in London, worked as a junior doctor. Then I went to Australia for 2 years, working also as a young doctor. Came back to Birmingham in 1964, joined a general practice in Smethwick, which I worked until 1999. And since then I've worked as a freelance independent locum. I do 2 nights a week in Birmingham, out of hours. I did last night, I finished at 8 o'clock this morning. But contrary to David's expression, I'm not actually tired. I'm very lucky. My health has not been perfect, but it's not been too bad. I'm still reasonably mobile and reasonably sane, I hope. As far as the minority communities which I belong, the Birmingham Jewish community, I was aware from a fairly early age that we were a tiny minority. There have never been more than 6,000 Jews in Birmingham at any one time, maximum today about 3,000. The community history does in fact go back to the early 18th century, and in the rate books of the 1740s and 50s there are some unmistakable Jewish names, which we'll come to later. I have brought some props with me we can have a look at if relevant. There was a historian called Hutton, not a Jew. He wrote the history of Birmingham in the 1780s. He was aware of the Jewish presence. In those days, the community lived in an area called the Froggery, which is now New Street Station. There was a particularly early rabbi called Rabbi Isaiah Phillips, who preached a sermon at the Battle of Trafalgar, celebrating Nelson's victory. His descendants still live in Birmingham, but they're no longer Jewish. This is a common feature in our community. The community suffers from exogamy, attrition, and even well-known family names disappear over generations. My own family has been in Birmingham since about 1830. My first ancestors come to Birmingham came from Cornwall. There was a Jewish settlement in Cornwall in the 18th century. It's been written up recently by several books on Jews in Plymouth and Penzance and Falmouth, and my family were amongst them in the 18th century. But in order to find better opportunities for trade, they came to the Midlands, say about 1830, and have been there ever since. Other strands of my family have moved in a much more common situation. Immigrants from Russia and Poland, places of Eastern Europe, in the late 19th century. Most of the people settled in London, but a sizable minority came to towns like Birmingham, Manchester, Leeds, and then further north too, Hull, Newcastle and Scotland. Birmingham actually is something of a historical anomaly. Why there are fewer Jews, relatively speaking, to the size of the town in Birmingham has never been adequately explained. There have been many theories, but nobody has really hit on the absolute answer. There may not be an absolute answer, it may be just chance. I don't know.
How often do you go to a synagogue?
That's a very good question. I should go. A good Jew should go every Saturday, every week, and then on the festivals like the Day of Atonement, New Year, the Passover. In reality, I probably go about 1 Saturday in 3. I'm in London quite a bit, can't always achieve it. When I do go, it's nearly always the oldest synagogue in Birmingham, which is called Singers Hill. It's down near the mailbox. It was built in 1856. I have been a seat holder since I was 21, and I try and go to it as often as I can, if only to get value for my seat rental.
Some more questions.
What is the Sabbath? And are you allowed to
What is
the Sabbath?
the Sabbath?
Yeah, and are you allowed to
Saturday? is the so-called day of rest. It's in the Old Testament in the Bible that you will work for 6 days, and on the 7th day you hallow it to the Lord. Now, Jewish days are a funny business. They don't start in the morning or midnight, they start the night before at sunset. So the Sabbath starts on Friday evening when the sun goes down. Of course, in the winter it goes down much earlier than in the summer. So that it lasts the whole of the day until the sun goes down the next day. So in the winter you start your Sabbath at about 3:30, and you finish at about 3:30 the following Saturday afternoon. You can go out to the cinema on Saturday evening, because it's not in the summer. In the summer, it may not go out till 10:30, particularly if you live somewhere like Iceland, which is very far north, and the day is very long. If you live on the equator, it's more or less the same. Because the timing is based on the movements of the sun and the moon. And the Jewish calendar is incredibly complicated. There are 7 leap months every 19 years. We have 1 leap day every 4 years. We just had one a couple of months ago. And we missed 3 out every 4 centuries. The Jewish calendar is much more complicated, but it ensures that the festivals always happen at the right season. And the Sabbaths and the festivals are dovetailed in within that. On those days, you're supposed to devote to worship and study of the religion. You're not supposed to do anything secular on the Sabbath and on festival days.
What is that thing on your head?
What is
that thing on your head? What does it refer?
This is what's called a kippah, K-I-P-P-A-H in English. It's a head covering. An Orthodox Jew, I'm not actually Orthodox, but I thought it appropriate to wear one coming to this group this morning. When I say I'm not Orthodox, I belong to an Orthodox synagogue. I personally am not quite as devout as some of my more religious brethren. I'm a bit left-wing when it comes to actually practicing things, but I thought it appropriate that you're supposed to have your head covered as a sign of respect to the Lord. Now, some faiths, you're supposed to take your hat off as a sign of respect for the Lord. Don't ask me why Jews are different, but they are.
Does following this rule disadvantage you?
Is it a disadvantage or a problem following all these rules?
If you're religious, then you would follow them because it's your duty to follow them. Disadvantage or not, you would go out of your way to keep the rules. If you're not religious, it's very difficult to. It's very personal, very difficult to find. Now, for example, I freely admit I don't always eat only kosher food. But in the Passover week, when you're not allowed to eat bread, you only have to have unleavened. I keep that strictly. Passover's coming up in 10 days' time. For 1 week, I will have no bread, no buns, no cakes, nothing with flour, only unleavened. Now, why do I do it? I don't know, but it's something I feel I ought to do. As my way of belonging to the club. Similarly, the Day of Atonement is a complete fast day, 25 hours, from sunset one night to sunset the next night. It's about 25 hours, complete total fast. Nothing to eat, nothing to drink. I keep that every year. It's only 1 day a year. Again, why do I do it? I don't know, but I can't imagine not doing it. But every other Jew will have their own wrinkles, and they'll have their own way of interpreting the rules. They'll all think they're right and everybody else is wrong. So of course I'm right. No, I don't think I'm right. I accept I'm often not right, but that's how it is.
We're going to have to stop there because we've got to get to an back, haven't we? But I'm sure that blog material there that we can use, pass the drama through, and also